Welcome to episode 33 of the Ikario podcast. Today's topic is algorithms, social media, and how they influence our lives and our behavior to, I think, a greater degree than most people realize. So in today's episode, we talk about why and how algorithms are reaching into our lives and reaching into our brains and are taking away agency and freedom from us.
We also talk about what most people get wrong about the relationship between algorithms and people, mainly that algorithms influence people at least as much as people influence algorithms.
And we talk about some specific examples of this, including a worrying trend that is arising that involves people's self-image and plastic surgery. Now, as usual, you can find show notes for this episode by going to ikario.com/033 for episode 33. So that is ikario.com/033 for the show notes and links to any books and any other things that we mention in this episode. And with that, let's get it started.
Let's get cracking. Hello and welcome to the Ikario podcast, where we help you break free from the human zoo, optimize your life, and become a force to be reckoned with your hosts again, myself, Ollie, and here he is.
And I'm Shane. Yeah, welcome. And today we're talking about algorithms and social media and how algorithms such as the ones that we encounter on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and so on, how they're warping our behavior. And I guess more importantly, how this interacts with living a good life.
Yeah.
Because maybe let's start there, right? Why are we talking about this in the first place? Can you give me because I think it was your episode suggestion, right? So what were your thoughts of, why do we need to cover this on the Ikario podcast?
Yeah, well, basically, the conversation we had this conversation pretty much, I would say about a year ago now, where you mentioned something that I guess it kind of haunted me because you mentioned that, because when I first moved to Lisbon and started learning from you and working with you were talking about the algorithm in such a way I'd never really heard before. And one example you gave was just how Instagram is changing the way women look and how they're paying attention to what an Instagram influencer looks like, trying to match that to the reality, and it's literally changing it. And that got me thinking, because that conversation actually spurred me on to quit Facebook and Instagram, make a video about it on my own YouTube channel, and it just made me think, shit, man. So it's no longer a case of an algorithm. It's just purely just on the internet. It's now something that's warping and shaping our behavior. And there was something just about that made me just think, hang on a minute, this is, because if it's doing that for some women on Instagram, then it's warping our behavior in other ways. And then I was looking for evidence of that in my own life, and it's like, yeah, totally, because for a long time I was using my Facebook account as kind of like validation for my ideas. Like I'd put something out there, if it got loads of likes, boom. And I looked back, and I was thinking that this has been shaping my behavior for ages. It's been feeding this sort of condition of my own self-worth, where it's like I've got to be interesting or intelligent, and people have got to approve of what I say. And it kind of strikes me as odd, because it means I'm then shaping my personality and my behavior for that. And it's basically just feeding into this approval seeking, which has always been a problem of mine anyway. But the reason why I thought we should talk about it now is mainly because it's not been that long since The Social Dilemma was released, and I just keep getting more people on that video I spoke about a moment ago. Just give me paragraph comments, sometimes essay-long comments about how they notice this sort of creepy algorithmic conditioning of the behavior, and they either caught it, perhaps a little too late, but better late than never kind of thing, and they've since quit, and this is the effect it's had, and it's almost always positive. So yeah, I just thought we'd talk about this now, and sort of flesh it out and go a little bit deeper on this.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that those are some great examples. And one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this as a topic is that it really is, as it relates to the goals that we have with ikario, right? Our goal is to help people kind of free themselves, essentially, right? It's like our goal, if we succeed at what we do, then we have listeners who can use what they learn here in order to become like freer agents, more powerful agents in their own lives. So they can say, hey, I have certain values and I have life goals and so on. And the way I live my life is in line with those things. So it's almost like the idea of, instead of being like in a victim role where stuff happens to you and you suffer from it and you complain about it, it's like you kind of forge your own path in life. And algorithms and social media are one of the most directly opposing forces to this. So I think Naval Ravikant, the famous like billionaire investor / philosopher, Naval Ravikant, put this really well. He was talking about it in terms of like weaponization. It's like your base desires and needs as a human are like being weaponized. And the food industry does this, right, with the way they design and market food. It's kind of your instincts for seeking nourishment are being weaponized and used against you, because the food industry doesn't care about whether you're healthy or happy or whatever. It's just about how do we extract more value, how do we extract more money out of this market. And they do this extremely successfully, which we can see by just the rising obesity, right?
Yeah.
The food industry is so effective at getting us to eat things in excess quantities and things that are bad for us in all kinds of ways, that it has this massive global effect, right? And so our base instincts that are being weaponized against us, and in similar ways, our base needs and instincts for things like, social connection, social validation, romantic relationships are being weaponized against us with these algorithms that feed us things like validation, Instagram, Facebook, that, Tinder and OnlyFans, that are basically using algorithmic optimization in order to extract more attention and extract more value from us. And it's to our detriment. So just like with the food industry, the more successfully the food industry reaches you, and the more successfully they turn you into an addict of ice cream and chips and all this other garbage, the worse off you are. And it's exactly the same with the attention economy. The more successfully that these companies and these systems reach you and extract value from you, the worse off you are as a person. And so I think this is just fundamentally important if you want to be a free agent in life. It's like fundamentally important that you gain control over this. And we live in this situation. We live in this total abundance of everything. There's too much of everything, and so we have to find a way to manage that. Because if we just go with the stream, it's a recipe for disaster, basically.
Yeah.
So let's maybe talk about what this has to do with algorithms. So the story, I think the first thing I'd like to clear up is like the story that you're usually told, or the way this is presented, is just not true. Because the story that is told is, you go to Facebook and you have a feed that is an algorithm has determined what to show to you in what order. Same on Instagram, right? You don't see the posts of people you follow in chronological order. No, this is a custom order. Only you see these posts in this order.
It used to be the case, though, didn't it?
Yeah.
It used to be the case. Like if it was on Facebook, you would see like your sort of your closest friends. It'd be in chronological order. I even remember when that was the case.
Mm-hmm. But every platform that does this kind of thing moves away from that. And it's the same on YouTube, right? It's like, people generally complain about it, but that's the way it is, right? On YouTube, you will, on your homepage, there will be channels that you've subscribed to with videos that you want to watch, and these videos never show up on your homepage. And instead, there's a whole bunch of videos from channels you've never subscribed to, you're not actually interested in, and that's all over your homepage, right?
Yeah.
And people generally complain about this, but the truth is it works. It works. But yeah, the story is that the algorithms basically show you more of what you want. That's what we're usually told, right? The algorithm is optimizing the feed to show you more of what you want. And this is just not true. And I think it's really important to recognize that this is not true. Because, well, in this context, what does it mean? What does want mean? What do I want? Because some very real, like measurable outcomes that are directly linked to people's social media consumption and people like falling into filter bubbles in social media, right? Where the world you see is like a little bubble formed around you. And this leads to like higher levels of division among people, right? It leads to people being more hateful and more outraged and more fearful of other people around them, of people who are whatever in the out group, right? Of whatever group you've been shoved into. People basically worry more. We've heard a lot of stories, and this is especially like the Trump administration, I think, was a good example of that. Families were being torn apart over whether you support Trump or not, or over whether you like pledge allegiance to Black Lives Matter or not, or something like that, right? And these are just two examples. Like even just saying this, right? There's probably angry comments being typed right now. It's like it's so divisive to just mention this, right? But there's many things like that where there's like these focal points where it's like, are you with us or are you against us? And you have to make a stand. And this literally tears families apart, where it's like, I can't talk to the members of my own family anymore because we disagree on one of these focal point topics, right? And that didn't happen before social media and algorithms, right? And also, like much more tragically, it also leads to, greater levels of like anxiety, depression, self-harm, suicide, and so on, especially among teenagers. Nobody wants this. So the idea that the algorithm gives you what you want, no, nobody fucking wants this, right?
Of course.
And so the basic truth here is that the algorithm is not designed to give you more of what you want. This is a lie that you're being told. No algorithm is designed to give you more of what you want. Algorithms are designed to make more money for the company that owns the algorithm. And usually that basically means that they're designed to turn you into an addict in some form. Like the specific goals that an algorithm is optimizing for are going to be slightly different, whether we're talking about, like, let's say, Netflix and their recommendation algorithm, or Amazon and what recommended products they show you, or, YouTube or Facebook or whatever. The specifics of exactly how this thing is tuned are going to be different based on the business model. But what you want is never part of the equation. It doesn't matter what you want. What matters is, can we keep you coming back? But the metrics that matter are always these kinds of engagement metrics, where it's like, how often do you come back and open the app again? How long do we keep you scrolling? How many things do you tap on? How many things do you comment on? How long can we keep you watching, et cetera, right? It's like, how much of your attention can we vacuum up? And it's also about, usually then there's also some money metrics. So it's like, how many ads can we show you? How many ads do you click on? Or how many products do you click on and buy, and so on, right? But what you want is never part of this equation. And it is like, so it's like, I think that's important to know, because I think that the story of that's what algorithms do, right? Because often you hear that as an excuse. Well, the algorithm is just showing you more of what you want, right? It's based on your preferences. And it's almost like as an excuse, well, if you're seeing all kinds of like violent, outrageous shit and so on, it's because you clicked on that. It's like you made that happen.
Yeah. Also, you can consider like, well, okay, we'll give you more of what you want. It's like, well, what part of you wants this? Because like there's a part of you that just wants to watch porn all day and just jerk off and do nothing. There's a part of you that just wants to eat pizza all day,
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, it'll give you more of what you want. But if you were to ask someone who was just in this YouTube binge, take them aside for a moment. Like, do you want to do this? And it's like, oh no, man, I've had a shitty day, but it's just I've been watching it for ages. I've lost track of time. Yeah, it's like you don't want that. But a part of you, probably a really powerful chimp part of you, is lapping this up, and that's precisely what the algorithms are targeting.
Yeah, and so that's the first thing that I think is important. And it's important, I think, also to push back against this narrative, whenever that's offered up. It's like, no, let's not pretend. Let's not pretend like what you want is part of the equation here, Or like you say, if, yes, maybe some like base desire is being tickled, but that's not the same. That's not what people tell you when you ask them what they want, right? But the other thing is also that there is algorithms are there's a lot of like self-reinforcing stuff happening, and they're not nearly as because again, the idea would be that somehow I have a preference profile and the algorithm successfully matches up content to that preference profile. But that's just not how it works. It used to be like in the early days of the internet, there was this idea of the long tail, and that turned out to be kind of a myth, right? The idea was like, it's going to be great because instead of, let's take like music, instead of a few popular artists having the entire audience, like the internet is going to be great for the long tail, the little niche artist over here will still be able to have an audience. But it turns out that algorithmically, this doesn't actually work out in favor of niche artists. So if anything, something like Spotify with its recommendation engine kind of pushes more people towards the already popular stuff than if there was no recommendation engine at all. And part of the reason for that is just simply like, well, how do you start, right? Like when in doubt, you always show something that's already popular. And so then obviously out of a selection of stuff that's already popular, I'm going to choose one of those things. And then that tells the algorithm I want more of this and so on, right? And it's like self-reinforcing. And there have been some interesting studies also that show kind of how the algorithm ends up like self-biasing and ends up making, far worse recommendations than it would seem, really. But then the other, that's like one side of it, right? It's like, I think we have a lot of like false stories about what the algorithms actually do going around. But the other thing is also that there is a two-way relationship here, because the other part of the story that's not true is that it's like this one-way thing, right? The algorithm figures out what you click on, what you want, what you respond to, and then serves you this stuff. But the truth is, it's not just human behavior that changes algorithms. It's algorithms that change human behavior because there are incentives involved. That this is not a neutral playing field. And so if you have, and like here's one of the weirdest examples of this is the phenomenon, I think we may have mentioned this before, there's a phenomenon on YouTube of anti-feminist, anti-woke Call of Duty channels. So Call of Duty, for those who don't know, is a video game, right? It's a online shooter video game. And you would think that has little to nothing to do with the political stances of like anti-woke, anti-political correctness, and anti-feminism, right?
Yeah, I would make that. I wouldn't assume there'd be any connection. But
you can find lots and lots of content on YouTube that is basically someone, you will be watching a gameplay stream of usually Call of Duty or some similar shooter game. So you'll be watching the gameplay of this guy running around, shooting, scoring points, whatever. And the commentary over top is about some scandal of, this actress said this thing, which just shows that feminism has gone too far. Or it's some other scandal, whatever, like outrage about overly political correct, and this is the end of, there's the end of civilization as we know it, is all these politically correct snowflakes and so on, right? This type of commentary. And it just seems like bizarre. Why is this happening? And this is a great example of algorithms shaping human behavior. Because clearly what happened here is that at some point, so we have a bunch of people who are, YouTube channels that are like Call of Duty YouTube channels. And one of them at one point, is maybe his his girlfriend broke up with him or something. He's frustrated about women at this point in time. And instead of his usual content, he makes a rant about feminism. And it gets a lot of views.
Yeah, that blows up.
It gets more views than usual. So what is he going to do for his next video? Right? Is he going to go back to, I'm just going back to normal. I'm just talking about Call of Duty now. Or is he going to be like, by the way, another thing that pisses me off about feminists, right? Yeah. Is he going to go, what pisses me off about feminists, the sequel, right? To get more of those juicy views. And not only, let's also be clear, I'm not just talking about views here, I'm talking about money. Because on YouTube, if you're part of the partner program thing, more views means more money, roughly, right? It translates roughly into more money.
It's just so much validation, isn't it? It's so much validation. You make a video and you're getting paid for it as a channel. You make a video bashing feminism. You get your audience saying, yeah, you know what? Oh my God, he's right. Feminists, FML. And you also get a shitload of money in your bank account. It's like there's so many parts of you that are being validated
totally
with that action.
And then what happens? So now we have one person who kind of stumbled into this and they're incentivized to do more of it. But what also happens, of course, is all the other Call of Duty gamers, streamers, whatever, they see this happening. Right? They see like this guy made a video ranting about feminism and he got more views than I ever got. You know what? I kind of hate feminists too. Right? Let's talk about that. Right? And that's how you end up having multiple channels doing this. And here's the thing. So first of all, clearly, without the algorithmic intervention, this would not have happened. Without the algorithm saying, ooh, this is getting people riled up, this is getting people to click more, to comment more, and so on, I'm going to boost this to more people. It's the algorithmic intervention that amplifies this signal, that amplifies the incentive. And it's also the algorithm that shows other people watching Call of Duty stuff more of this stuff. And that basically makes everyone in that bubble aware that, oh, there's money to be made over here by talking about anti-woke, anti-feminist stuff, right? And it shapes behavior because, first of all, okay, lots of people then start cranking out these videos. But also, humans generally avoid feeling cognitive dissonance. So cognitive dissonance is when your actions are out of line with your values. So, for example, if you ask me, do you think lying is a good thing or a bad thing? And I say, oh, it's a bad thing. People shouldn't lie. But then you catch me in a lie. Say, well, why did you lie about this? I will not just say, well, I guess I'm a bad person. I'll say, well, in this case, it was different because I'll have some justification. I come up with some story that makes me not have to sit in the cognitive dissonance of believing that lying is bad, but also I'm a liar. Yeah. I don't want that. And so what happens is we have people initially making these anti-feminism videos, and then they keep doing it because they get rewarded for it. Now, if you stop one of them and ask, hey, what do you actually think about feminism and women? Are they going to tell you, well, it's not that important to me, but I'm making good money on YouTube, So I'm kind of lying to people on YouTube. Very few people are going to say that.
Yeah.
Most people are going to be like, no, this is for real. This is absolutely for real, and feminism is a real problem, etc., right? That's the story they're going to tell. And so in this way, you have the algorithm creating what ends up being what feels like a real justified worldview for the people who are these Call of Duty streamers. And their audience, of course, now gets fed all of this stuff. Like that, you have an audience of millions of kids mostly, who originally just like, I like this video game. And now they're being fed all this anti-woke, anti-feminism stuff, right?
Yeah.
So the algorithm is changing people's behavior and people's worldview. And it's purely algorithmic. And I give this example of the Call of Duty streamers. And by the way, I'm not saying, just to be clear, I'm not saying that every Call of Duty streamer does this or anything like that. It's just that's like a little niche phenomenon, right? Where you can just see how it is just an accident of the algorithm, but it affects millions of lives. Okay, it affects millions of lives. And it also then creates this whole radicalization pipeline, which again, look, it doesn't matter. It happens that in this case, it's like it leans conservative, right? And it leans to radical conservative views. But the same, it doesn't matter which way it leans. The point is that that's one of the things the algorithm does, is it shoves people down these radicalization funnels, essentially. Not intentionally. It's just that that's what happens to maximize engagement. And, whether it shoves you down a far-right conspiracy nonsense rabbit hole or a far-left conspiracy nonsense rabbit hole, or the world is run by lizard people or whatever, it doesn't matter, right? I don't care which one of these things it sucks you down. What I care is that it's happening at all. What I care is that if the algorithm didn't do what the algorithm does, we wouldn't have so many people with all kinds of crazy skewed beliefs hating each other, right?
Yeah, this runs really deep.
Yeah.
Yeah, this runs really deep.
And so, okay, I think that's important to realize, right? That the way the algorithm is tuned, it ends up affecting, what people consume. It ends up affecting what people believe and how they act. And also, and this is even just like, this is actually like a level 2 problem, because the level 1 problem is that you end up spending too much time doing these things that you don't really want to, like you say with the porn example, right? It's like, okay, so you jerked off to porn for 5 hours. It's not really in line with your life goals. It's not what you wanted to do, but this thing effectively managed to hook you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same with, most people don't imagine their ideal life to involve swiping and tapping at a screen for hours a day. But that's what these things get you to do. And there's another thing where I think there's been a bit of a misleading narrative, where, and it's well-meaning. There's this idea that with something like Facebook, you are not the customer, you are the product, right? Because you're not charging for it, you're not the customer, you're the product. And I know that this is well-meaning, and it's better to believe that than to believe that you're the customer. But I think you're not the product either. It's like, it's more like you're the substrate out of which value is being extracted. So it's think about a product, right? Let's say copper. Okay, you have a customer who needs copper to manufacture something, and you have copper, the product. Copper is the product, the customer buys the copper. In this equation with social media, you are not the person buying the copper, obviously. You're also not the product, you're not the copper. You're the mountain that's getting hollowed out because there's copper inside, right? You're the substrate that's out of which value is being scraped. And that's a bit different. So,
and the value is essentially your attention.
And the value is the product is your attention. Yeah, the product or the product is primarily your attention. The product is also your money. It's like it's your money changing hands. Although arguably, like in some cases, like people like Tristan Harris, for example, would probably make the argument that often it's not even about money anymore. It's more about changing people's behavior. Because yes, of course, I can run Facebook ads to make a bit of money, but I can run Facebook ads to to win a country. If I do it right, an entire country is up for grabs. So I'm not that interested in money.
That's how powerful it's gotten.
Yeah. So, okay. So this is the basic idea of, and I think it's important to realize that this is, actually another thing I want to say about this is, look, I always say this from the perspective of, this is something we are all vulnerable to. It's just like with biases, right? I have an obsession with biases and understanding biases. And my perspective is always, I am vulnerable to these biases. I'm not saying who look at all these other idiots who fall for this stuff. No, I'm my main concern here. I am vulnerable to bias. And if I can become more aware of that, if I can become more aware of like the weaknesses in my system and how they can be exploited, then maybe I can do a little better. And it's the same with social media, right? I'm not saying that this is not an other people problem. This is a me problem. If I interact with social media, this happens to me. And I think it's really important to have this perspective, like to see we are susceptible to this, even if we know about it, even with everything I've just talked about algorithms, even if I knew even more about them, I would still be susceptible to them. So, okay, that's kind of part one, because like I said, obviously, if these things, the deeper these things have their hooks in your brain, the less agency you have over how you live your life.
That's the main, on a personal level, that's the main problem with these things, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, there's plenty of them, but that's the main one. Is you don't have control over your attention and where it's going.
There's another phenomenon here that I think is worth talking about, just to show how deeply this thing affects, how deeply this reaches into the real world. And that is the phenomenon of Instagram face. So Instagram face is this phenomenon that there is a certain type of face, there's a certain look that is becoming like the standard on Instagram. And it's like everyone's selfies are like converging on this one ideal pretty much, right? or a large majority at least, are converging on this one ideal, like ideal proportions and so on. And basically, you know it. Instagram face is, like thick eyebrows, big long lashes, thick lips, high cheekbones, kind of narrow, tiny nose, and tan skin. And, more or less. Basically, you've seen this face a million times. And everyone's face is like... And so what happens, and this, I found this in an article here. There's a guy called Kobe Smith who's a celebrity makeup artist. So he's like in the world of, of how your face is supposed to look like. He's deep in the world of that.
Yeah.
Of changing your face to get more validation, basically, right? And he says, I think 95% of the most followed people on Instagram use Facetune. So Facetune is an app where you upload your picture, and it's an AI that detects your face, and you can then just use some simple sliders to say, like, give me fuller lips, give me longer lashes, give me a narrower cheekbones, or whatever it is, right? So you just have a bunch of sliders and it does it automatically. So it's basically like a Photoshop program where you don't have to actually learn Photoshop, because it just detects the features of your face and you can manipulate them. Kind of like in a character creation menu.
Yeah, I was about to say on like Skyrim or something.
Yeah, and the question is, can you make yourself look like handsome Squidward? That's what I do.
Handsome Squidward?
Yeah. There's like a SpongeBob meme.
Oh shit, I've not
where
seen
at
that.
one point, like, Squidward gets hit by a door and it turns him super handsome. I don't know, I've never seen SpongeBob, but I know the meme.
I'm gonna check that out. I'm also gonna put that
in the show notes
right here.
Yeah,
here's handsome Squidward.
Yes. Anyway, so yeah, and he basically says, look, of all the like celebrities on Instagram, the people with the most followers, he says easily 95% of them are using Facetune. So you're not seeing their real face; you're seeing their face after it's been tuned, right? He also says, and I would say that 95% of these people have also had some sort of cosmetic procedure. You can see things trending, like everyone's getting brow lifts via Botox now.
That's mental.
So, and again, so here's how this ties in with everything we talked about before. The normal story that we're usually told about this is that, yes, there are some beauty standards, and of course some people will aspire to look similar, but what's the harm? But there are a couple of factors here that I think are easily overlooked. One is that there is this algorithmic incentive and reinforcement. It's not just people looking at pictures and going, ooh, this is a really nice looking face. I wish my face looked like this. No. It is an algorithm surfacing and incentivizing a certain look. So there's a certain look that will get more likes, more comments, more reach, more sponsorships, etc. Right? There's more attention and more reach and more money in a certain look over another look. And so that adds a completely different factor into this equation. It is not just, I'm looking at someone who looks prettier than me. It is this person with this, or this kind of face. And that's where we see the convergence, is like this kind of face is like the famous Instagram influencer lifestyle rich's face. Mm. This kind of face is the everything I want in life face, right? But also with that conversion, like the algorithm is creating that convergence because of two things. Again, you have signal being boosted. Other people who are incentivized, they're basically copying this. They also want to be Instagram famous. They also want validation. They also want to be an Instagram influencer. Are seeing a repetition of this kind of style, this kind of picture, and so they want to do more of that. And the more of that, the more of the similar thing is in the system, the more likely it is, this is the algorithmic bias, the more likely it is that the algorithm goes, oh, this kind of thing is popular, so I should show it to more people, right? It becomes self-reinforcing. And Facetune is an imperfect program. Facetune is a program that looks at a picture and identifies the things that are easiest to identify about a face, and it will be differently able to make changes to different features of a face. And it will be most able to just exaggerate some obvious features like big lashes, big lips, and so on. And so even Facetune itself contributes to what the Instagram face ends up looking like. Like if Facetune, there's a world, right? There's a parallel dimension where Facetune is a bit different, right? Facetune is like a bit differently capable. Maybe the UI is a bit different, right? And we end up with a different Instagram face because of that, is my point. And people are getting plastic surgery to look like this. Okay, this is how it's reaching out into the real world. People are getting plastic surgery, and what's literally happening. I read this in an article as well, where from a plastic surgeon, where he was like, "What's normal now? What used to be is that clients come in, they come in with the picture of an actress or something, and say, I want a nose like her. Now people come in with a picture of themselves that they face-tuned and say, I want to look like this."
Jesus Christ. They've got the work cut out for them, these cosmetics.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I want to add one more wrinkle to this. And this is purely my own pet theory, okay? I can't link to a source, or I don't know. I might be wrong about this. This is just a hunch I have. I think that the reason we're seeing the proportions we're seeing, because what we're seeing with, and look, the face is just one example, because we're seeing this in general. We're seeing the face with like overly full lips, overly long lashes, thick eyebrows. And we're also seeing things like exaggerated proportions, right? Huge butts on women, very thin waist, huge butt. But also on men, if you look at like fitness influencers, they have like exaggerated, almost cartoonish proportions. You know, like very wide shoulders, very narrow hips, like very, very muscular, almost like exaggeratedly muscular. And why is that happening? My theory is that this has to do with the screen size that we're looking at this stuff at, and with thumbnails. So from icon design, right? In graphic design, one of the things you can design is like an icon. And an icon is, logos are also a bit like that. Logos and icons are a bit like that, where it's tricky to design that because it has to work and it has to be recognizable at many different sizes. So a good icon is something that, of course, you know, if I have screen filling icon here, I can recognize what it is and it looks nice. But also the icon might be used like in the corner of a browser tab, right? It's like tiny. Or also with a logo, you know, of course, you know, if I'm designing the logo for a soft drink or something, it has to look good on like a giant poster advertising this drink. But it also has to look good and be recognizable, like across the store, you know, on the bottle in the aisle. Okay? So a logo has to work well at very small scales and at all the scales in between. And what that leads to is like, you can't have like very complicated or intricate shapes and things like that, because as soon as you shrink that down, it just becomes unrecognizable, it becomes a mess, right? So you want to have like very clear, like exaggerated lines and contours that's still recognizable when you scale it down. Well, if you had to iconize a face or a body, then you would do exactly that kind of thing, right? You would do, because if I want to communicate full lips, but I want to communicate it on a tiny image, the lips have to be very full and very red. Like you have to exaggerate that a bit.
Massive duck lips.
Yeah. In such a way that like in real life, it doesn't actually look good anymore, right? You've exaggerated it. And this is what I think happens because people are scrolling through Instagram and you have like these little squares that are, you know, on what, like half an arm's length away. So these are really small images. And so for things like long lashes, thick lips, large butt, whatever, for that to translate on this small size, you have to exaggerate the proportions. And the same with the male physique, right? Like square jaw, it has to be like ridiculously square and angular and stand out. And wide shoulders have to be like ridiculously wide compared to your waist, so that it still translates on the small image. And I think we're basically seeing like these iconized proportions pop up. And again, this isn't like it's the algorithm. The algorithm is involved at the level of, as a human, you're looking at these small images, these small thumbnails, and the stuff that attracts you these like attraction signals that stands out to you. So the kind of physique or the kind of face that still effective at this small size will stand out to more people, will get more engagement, and that starts the incentive engine, and now everybody has to look like that.
Yeah, this algorithmic behavior conditioning, man, it's pretty scary. I mean, there's actually a pretty geeky example of this from before the time that Facebook even existed, right? So I used to paint Warhammer models.
Oh yeah.
And they were very good, actually. If I look back at old photos, they were pretty incredible. But I also painted a lot of shit models before I painted my first good one, right?
Yeah.
And I bought, this was about the time that the Games Workshop released this like Lord of the Rings film-inspired game. So I bought loads of these soldiers, put them together, and I wanted them to look like how they looked on the box. But on the box, looking back now, it's a digitally altered image, and it was well lit, and it just looked amazing. And I had just this little model in front of me, and I was painting it to try and look like desperately trying to get it to look like it looked on the box. And I became kind of entranced by this effort. I kept trying to make it look like how it looked on the box, and eventually all of my models just looked horrible. They looked insane. Like they were painted terribly. The eyes were all over the place, like, you know. And I was like, but I was trying to make it look like the way it looked on the box. And it's like that's what happened when I was trying to make reality match an altered
image. Yeah. And that totally happens. Like here, maybe we can also link to Instagram reality. There's a subreddit called Instagram reality, which will contrast pictures that influencers post of themselves versus, let's say, a picture from like a live TV show where they appeared. They're like barely recognizable. They look totally different in real life, and often they look a bit cartoonish and weird. And I think that's the same kind of thing, right? You've optimized so far to look perfect in this particular way in this selfie that in real life you kind of look not very good anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
That's pretty bizarre. Eh? Anyway, so, and I guess this is all just to say, like, don't underestimate the power of these algorithms and how they will actually change, how far they reach into your real life. And again, if you're interested in just having like agency, right? If you're interested in kind of living life on your own terms, then the only solution I know is to extricate yourself from this stuff. Like don't use social media. Don't play this game of posting stuff and getting likes and all this kind of just don't.
Honestly, quite often I try to take the sort of moderation route with certain things and say like maybe when it comes to food or like video games or whatever, let's play a strategic sort of moderation based thing. Yeah. But this stuff, I can't bring myself to take that line with it in the same way I would with other things. It's like it's so toxic. And just from me leaving it, I noticed that I actually have managed to reclaim my attention. I mean, other things can take its place, like YouTube and Reddit, if I let it. But the point is, it's way easier for me to maintain my agency over this stuff. The amount of comments I've been getting on that video of people saying, yep, just get rid of it. This is not contributing to a better world in the future. It makes literally everyone worse in some way. Yeah. It makes everything weaker, makes us less compassionate, as well as the rest of it. And for what exactly?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's, I think also most of the advertised upsides are, most people would say, well, I use social media because it helps me stay in touch with people and stuff. But look, 90% of the time, like you're scrolling through bikini pics and posts that make you angry and stuff like that. It's like you're not actually using it for staying in touch with people. And it's not the best way to stay in touch with people, right? Exactly.
When it comes to influencers, there's something culturally that I find a little bit odd. For a long time, I've found it unusual how celebrities are created. Like how a culture selects for like certain people to be celebrities, while other people who might achieve something that the culture genuinely values kind of get forgotten about.
Yeah.
Like Nikola Tesla, for example. There's just basically shitloads of examples of this.
Mm-hmm.
And it got me thinking about like why influencers exist. So like, say you, for instance, you get someone who becomes an influencer because they upload a load of photos of their arse, and the algorithm's like, oh, people seem to like these arse photos.
Mm-hmm.
And she gets shown to so many people. She gets fuckloads of followers. She has essentially attained status of as a celebrity, and has influence over loads of people for arse pictures.
What if it's a really good ass?
It might be a great ass, and I'm not opposed to great asses in a culture, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is, it's like this person's been elevated to a point where they influence a lot of people, but the reason for it, it's like, why?
Yeah, it has nothing to do with merit. I think that's pretty important to see as well, right? It's like that unfortunately we don't have a system. We don't live in a system that assigns like fame and value, or monetary reward along with merit in many ways. Like in some ways, maybe yes, mildly, right? There's like a mild correlation between merit and accolades and rewards, But it's mild at best. Yeah. It's mild at best. And again, like, okay, what it comes down to it's successfully hijacking some base desire. So in this case, it's like the weaponization of legging-clad asses, right? Where, of course, lots of people like to see a shapely bum, but that is then being weaponized, and it's like being exaggerated to this degree, where it's like so bizarre that you can make a career of being able to like take pictures of your ass basically in very well presented angles. That's basically what you do.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's kind of a hijacking of something that is a base desire that makes a lot of sense. But it becomes totally divorced from any value that it would have originally had, because, okay, why do you respond positively to a shapely bum? It's this part of you goes, oh, mating potential, right?
Yeah.
But if you're scrolling through Instagram with all this stuff, like you're so far removed from that.
Precisely. Yeah.
But it's just like obesity is like a success story for the food industry. People being addicted to Tinder and porn and Instagram and so on, and like, subjecting themselves to like a fire hose of sexualized images every day is a tragedy for everyone, except it's a success story for the people who are on the other side of those algorithms.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I'm not, I'm like with the whole ass thing, I'm not targeting people who make money that way.
No.
God, Lord knows, if I could make my money taking ass photos, make like a little bit of side hustle money taking ass photos on Instagram, I would. But as it happens, that wouldn't win me any followers, I guarantee it.
Dude, have you tried?
Wouldn't make me any money.
No, it's also,
mortified.
I don't want to, and it's also obviously like this is the butt Instagrammer is usually female, but obviously there's the equivalent of that too. On the, for guys, you have people, you have the jawline Instagrammers and whatnot,
Yeah, I was just about to, I'm going to say, I wonder what the male equivalent of that would be.
Yeah.
But
it's not their fault, and you can't blame someone for following the incentives, but also that another whole part of that is that a lot of people are heavy social media users and social media contributors because they have the delusional hope that they too could be an influencer, and in that way it's a little bit like a pyramid scheme. And so again, like, it's just the only way to win is not to play. And I challenge anyone who thinks that, oh, but I really need this, or it's not that bad for me, or whatever, just quit for like 30 days.
Yeah.
Right? Because look, the world's not going to end if you leave social media for 30 days. And if it really is something that's not that big of a deal for you, then it's no problem to quit for 30 days, right? So just do it and see how you feel about it.
Precisely. That's how I started. I just said I'm going to quit for 30 days. And then here I am, like a year and 2 months later, and I'm like, oh, well, I have no intention of going back.
Mm-hmm. And then the other side of this is like you can also try to be. I would also encourage people like that. The next step beyond that is, like free yourself from this shit, live a better life. But also try to be on the right side of history on this. So if anyone's further intrigued, what I would recommend is to go to the Your Undivided Attention podcast, which is the one by Tristan Harris, and unfortunately I forgot what the co-host's name is. This is a great podcast that goes really deep into algorithms and how they're changing the world, but also what we can do about it. And I think it's very, very clear that the algorithms are on the wrong side of history. Like we will look back at this and be like, oh, that was a mistake. Those are some bad times.
Yeah, I'm convinced of that.
Yeah. And there's also ways to, beyond just freeing yourself, you can look at, how can I contribute to the brighter future that we hopefully can bring around,
Yeah, it's a good question.
All right. So I hope I've scared some people off of social media. It worked for you, right? So it's like
it worked for me. It's frightened me to the core. So now moving into the next section of this podcast by asking yet another ridiculous question. Shane, what I've been dying to know this. What is your spirit vegetable?
So my spirit vegetable is a radish. I think we established, right?
Yeah, we talked about this a long time ago, and I just thought it'd be funny to bring up on the podcast again.
Spirit vegetable. So for me, it's a radish, and for you, what was it for you?
I think it was an aubergine.
Yeah,
I think it was an aubergine. I don't fully know.
I think that
know why.
So the question of the spirit vegetable. So usually the question is like, what is your spirit animal, right? But I think it's just as legitimate a question as what is your spirit vegetable. I mean, you can really think about it,
Okay.
Like,
why did you choose radish?
Well, a radish is like crunchy and spicy,
Is that?
And it has like the right, a radish has like this. It has the kind of an attitude that a cucumber doesn't have that attitude,
I don't know, man. I find it so funny that just to know that there's a part of you that self-describes as crunchy and spicy.
Well, it's more of an aspiration, right? It's an aspiration to be crunchy and spicy.
Crunchy, spicy, and an attitude.
Yeah. It's like I want to go through life like a radish,
As opposed to
like, I don't know, spinach. Nothing against spinach, but I don't want to be spinach, You don't
want to wilt. You don't want to wilt under pressure.
Some wilty spinach, no.
Go through life as some wilty spinach. It's making me wonder why my subconscious served up aubergine.
Yeah, I don't know.
Why aubergine? I don't even like aubergine.
You don't like it?
I don't like aubergine. No.
Well, that makes it even weirder.
Just served it up like, you know what? You're an aubergine, Ollie. Deal with that. All right.
Well, I'm glad we covered that.
Well, me too. Our audience members are just
finally they know.
The people. We have informed the people. Okay.
All right. So that's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed this. And of course, if you have questions or feedback, if you have your own like war stories of escaping social media and how it changed your life, then you can let us know by leaving a comment, and you can do so on YouTube if you're watching this on YouTube, or you can go to the blog post that goes with this episode, which is ikario.com/033. And yeah, we'd love to hear from you. And also, if you have questions or suggestions for what we should cover in future episodes, then you can always let us know. And finally, if you want to help spread the word about the Ikario podcast, one of the things you can do that helps us out is you can leave a review and a rating on Apple Podcasts. So that will really help just, get more people to stumble across our content, and hopefully that will help them out.
All right. Until next week. Thanks for listening, guys. Take care.